Hey everybody, hope you're having a good day. I wanted to read you another story. It's called Harriet and the Garden. It's a fun story. Maybe you've already heard it, but we can read it together again. I hope you're doing great, and I hope you remember we had a lot of fun at the Blast up in Utah, and we had a chance to be together and goof off and eat some wonderful food. We stayed at a pretty big place that could fit all of us, and that was really nice. And we got to do some evening things, and we did our Olympics, if you remember that. So I hope you had a great time at the Blast. We've had a lot of rain here in Arizona, and it's been pretty exciting. In fact, today it's not even that hot, and there's more clouds, and we've been having rain almost every couple days, which is strange for us. Well, we hope you have a wonderful time and you're doing good. I know everybody traveled really far to be able to be at the Blast, and we're so grateful that everybody was able to be there and the cousins were running and jumping and having a blast. Do you remember that song? The cousins are playing together at last. They're running and jumping and having a blast. Well, we're going to read this story if you're ready for it. Harriet and the Garden. And let's see what we learn about Harriet and the Garden. Well, there's Harriet getting ready to play some baseball. She's got her mitt on, and there's a ball, and there's some other players. And it says, it was a beautiful summer day. Harriet was playing ball with some of her friends. Sounds like it was just the perfect day outside. Maybe you have some perfect days where you just gotta be outside and love the weather. Sounds like Harriet's loving the weather. Oh, and then it says, across the park, you can see the kids playing, but further away, there was somebody with their garden. It says, Mrs. Who's It was working in her garden. Do you see her pretty garden with all those flowers and the little dinky fence around it to keep it nice? And do you see the kids getting ready to play their baseball game? Mrs. Who's It had been waiting for this day for a long time. She had grown some really perfect flowers, and she had one called a dahlia, which was in full bloom. And look at that dahlia in perfect bloom. It's sort of an unusual flower, and it's like a prize to have something grow that nice. And she said, I must call the garden club and have them come right over today and have a look. So she wanted people in a garden club that just love flowers to come over and see her flower and see how nice it is. And sometimes garden clubs give out awards if you make a really special flower, and they take pictures of it and maybe put it in the newspaper. So Mrs. Who's It was pretty excited because she knew she grew one of the prettiest dahlia plants around. Meanwhile, Harriet was playing baseball, and Harriet was out in the outfield. So somebody else had the bat, and there's the pitcher, and there's the ball, but Harriet was out in the outfield. Suddenly, George hit a fly ball. Harriet just had to catch it. If she didn't, it would be a home run for sure. So, boom! Do you see George hit the ball past the pitcher? It's really a big one. And there's Harriet. Is Harriet going to catch the ball? Well, let's see what happens. Harriet ran back and back. She kept her eyes on the ball. She was concentrating so hard that she never even noticed when she came to Mrs. Who's-It's garden. So there's Harriet trying to catch that ball. And look at her. She's just looking at the ball and she's hoping to catch the ball. And look how close she's getting to the garden. But she doesn't even notice she's getting close to the garden because she is so focused on catching that ball. She is just keeping her eye right on it and she's going to catch it. She ran backward right through the perfect mums. Then she trampled the lilies. Isn't that funny? There's a flower called lily. And she went right through the mums and the lilies. And look, she even went through the little fence. And I don't even notice if she knew that she broke the little fence. Because look at her. Her eyes are still on catching that ball. She just wants that ball to go right in her baseball mitt. And so she is totally focused. And look at all the players. They're looking at her like, can she catch it? Well, let's see what happens. In the middle of the rose bushes, she caught the ball. Oh, she made it into the rose bushes, and you can see the ball came down and went right in her mitt. And look at her, she's still looking at the ball. And when you look at the ball, you have a better chance of catching it. And that's all she was looking at. She wasn't looking at the ground or the flowers. She just kept looking at that magic baseball because she wanted to catch it. It was really important. And then she fell right down on the prize dahlia in full bloom. Oh no, she crushed the dahlia plant. Oops, said Harriet. Let's get out of here, her pals said. So they all said, we're getting out of here. And it looks like one person over here is a little bit scared. They're like, oh no, we got to get out of here. And so everybody decided to run away. And Harriet was still laying on the dahlia plant. I don't know, but maybe she broke it. Oh no, she pretty much made a big mess. Even the fence is broken. Do you see that? Oh my. Let's see what happens. Everyone ran away as fast as they could, except for Harriet. She looked around at the garden. Everything was ruined, even the dahlia plant. Look at the dahlia plant. Once you break it, it's going to die when you break it. So, I don't know. She's looking a little bit sad. Suddenly, Harriet heard Mrs. Who's-It's voice. What happened to my beautiful garden? Uh-oh, Harriet heard Mrs. Who's-It. And you can see she's still got the ball in her hand and her glove on, and she's still even standing in the garden in the beautiful dahlia plant. I don't know, it looks pretty beat up. Oh no, Harriet was so scared that she just took off running like crazy. She ran and ran and ran, and she never turned back. She was running as fast as she could. She's still holding the baseball, and she's got her glove on, but she is running, 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 running. She must be getting tired. Oh, my mustache isn't holding on as good as it used to. And then, she came in the house and ran up to her room and slammed the door, and she was panting and can you see her? She made it to the safety of her bedroom and slammed the door. Uh-oh. Now she starts thinking. She says, maybe Mrs. Who's-It's, maybe she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't recognize me. So now she's just thinking. But she decided she better spend the rest of the day inside So she wanted to just stay inside her bedroom all day long. She was worried if she went outside, she might be seen, and Mrs. Hoosits might want to talk to her maybe. I think she's feeling a little bit bad because she knows she did something that wasn't very good. She didn't mean to do it, but she did something that she feels bad about. Wow. Well, let's see what happens. So now Harriet is in her bedroom and she's thinking about what happened, and I don't think she's feeling the best right now. "Are you all right, Harriet?" said her mom. So her mom came and said, "Hey, are you okay?" "Just fine," said Harriet. And she's reading a book. But you know what? I think the book's even upside down. She's just trying to pretend she's okay. She's not really okay, but she's pretending she's okay. She said, "Mom, I'm just fine." That night, Harriet couldn't eat supper. She didn't feel good. She was not very happy. So there's the food, and she's just looking at it like, "I'm not really hungry." Then she went to watch her favorite TV show, but she said it just wasn't very interesting. Oh my. I think she's feeling a little bit sad about what happened. Even though she didn't mean to do it, I think she's feeling bad that Mrs. Hoosit's plants are all messed up. And I think she's feeling a little bit bad about that. What do you think? Do you think she's feeling a little bit bad about that? Even though she didn't purposely do it, but it did happen. She didn't even care when her mom made some popcorn balls. And so even her little sister was like, "You need some popcorn balls." And look at Harriet. She doesn't seem like she is interested even in the popcorn balls. Can you say popcorn ball? Wow. When Harriet went to bed that night, she could not sleep. And isn't that sad? She couldn't even sleep when she went to bed. It's like she just couldn't stop thinking about what happened during the day. And so let's see what else happens, okay? And when she finally went to sleep, guess what? She had some dreams that were a little bit scary or not fun for her. And so she didn't sleep that well. When she finally did go to sleep, she kept somehow thinking about what happened, and it just made for a weird dream. The next morning, Harriet made a decision. She got out of bed, and she decided she was going to do something. What do you think she decided she's going to do? Any ideas? Do you have any ideas? Say, "Hey, Papa, I think she's going to do this," or "I think she's going to do that." Well, here's what happened. She went straight to Mrs. Hoosit's house and she apologized. She said, "I'm sorry that your plants got hurt. I didn't mean it, but I'm sorry that they got broken." And so Mrs. Hoosits, I think, felt really nice about that. It's like, this Harriet is a good person. So guess what happened? They spent the rest of the day putting in new flowers and tying up the broken rose bushes, and they had a great time. So Harriet worked with Mrs. Hoosits, and they fixed up the garden, and they got to work together, and Harriet felt really good. And they staked up some of the plants, and the ones they couldn't, they planted some new ones. And Harriet got to help Mrs. Hoosits. which made for some really good times. And how do you think Mrs. Hoositz felt? She probably felt pretty good about Harriet coming and apologizing. And it made them both be good friends, and they got to work on the garden together and just have a great day. Do you think Harriet's feeling a little bit better? Even though she worked, she felt better. Oh my, when Harriet got home, she was a mess. She had got dirt all over her while she was helping Mrs. Hoositz. And look at that. She came into the house and she needed to get cleaned up. Harriet, are you all right? Her mom asked, because her mom saw and maybe she didn't realize what was going on. She said, are you okay, Harriet? Well, let's see. Looks like Harriet's reaching for the popcorn balls. Harriet said, I'm doing just fine. I'm doing great. And look at her. Now it looks like she has an appetite for those homemade popcorn balls. And that's the end of the story. Look at that. So I hope you liked the story about Harriet and the garden. Now that you see that picture, you can see the ball and her glove, and she's in the garden. There's one thing I noticed that's sort of cute. At the end of the story is a picture of the girl that wrote the story. And guess what? She is with her dog, and her dog, that is the dog that helped her cause the story and reminded her of Harriet. And it says, Nancy Carlson, with the inspiration for Harriet, her 12-year-old golden retriever named Dame. So this is Dame, and when she thought about writing a story, Dame must get in gardens once in a while, and she wrote this whole story with inspiration from her own dog. And so it's not Harriet, it's Dame, but that's the dog that reminded her of this whole story. So maybe Dame gets into the garden once in a while and maybe digs and creates some mischief. And so that is, I wanted you to see the picture of the actual Harriet and the inspiration for the story. And that is Nancy, and she wrote this story. Can you see it okay? I know there's a little bit of a reflection, but that's Nancy. And she wrote this story. Maybe when you get bigger, you'll write your own stories. And that'll be fun. Well, I love you, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this fun story about doing the right thing when something not the best happens. And sometimes it's not your fault, but it's how you handle it afterwards that makes a big difference. And you can see how it affected Harriet. She made the right decision, and she ended up with a good friend with Mrs. Hoositz, and she enjoyed playing with and helping refix the garden. And so now she is really happy about that. Well, anyway, I love you, and I hope you have a great day, and remember this. Have a great day. Bye-bye.